this is my audience, and in their hands is the PowerPoint that will help guide them through my speech. Good evening. My name is Mark Mendoza, and I'm going to be giving you a call to action speech. My goal by the end of the speech is to have you take action and do something about the problem that I'll present. So, what I want to talk about is plastic. Plastic. It's in the water bottles you drink. It's the toys that you buy for your kids. It's all around us. It's easy to make and it's cheap to make. And unfortunately, it's becoming an increasing problem in our world. So, Richard Thompson of the Environmental Health reports that plastics are very long-lived products that potentially have service over decades, and yet the main use of these lightweight, inexpensive materials are single-use items that will go on garbage dumps within a year and will persist over centuries. Let's think about that for a second. Not decades, not years, centuries. So longer than basically you will be alive. David Barnes, researcher for the British Antarctic Survey, reports that plastic is one of the most ubiquitous, long-lasting recent changes on the surface of our planet, with more than 300 million tons of it being produced annually. 300 million tons, not pounds, tons. So let's think about this for a second. Where does the production of this long-lasting material go when it's no longer in use? And how is it affecting us directly? Well, for one, chemicals within the plastic are being absorbed by the human bodies. Some of these compounds have been found to alter hormones and have other potential harms to human health. The U.S. Center of Disease Control and Prevention reports that 93% of people have detectable levels of BPA in their urine. 93%. Now, BPA has been shown to cause early sexual maturation, decreased male fertility, aggressive behavior, have all been reported by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, but only recently has BPA been banned in certain items like toddler bottles or infant sippy cups. Now, plastic debris laced with chemicals are often ingested by marine animals and can cause injury and poison to the wildlife. So now it's affecting the wildlife as well. Floating plastic wastes, which can survive for thousands of years in the water, serve as mini transportations for invasive species, disrupting habitats, traveling from coast to coast. And the reason they last thousands of years in the water is because of the reduced UV exposure and lower temperatures in aquatic habitats. So think about this, thousands of years of plastic that's floating from coast to coast and the damage it's causing to the animals and the wildlife within the ocean. So it's been reported that more than 180 species of animals have been documented to ingest plastic debris, to include birds, fish, turtles, and even marine mammals. And this is all according to the Environmental Health News. But I know you're thinking, well, we don't all throw plastic in the water. What about plastic on land? What is that doing? Or the plastic that we throw in the trash? Well, plastic buried deep in landfills can leach harmful chemicals to our groundwater. And what's even crazier than that is that 4% of the world's oil is used as a feedstock to make this plastic, and a similar amount is consumed as energy in the process per the Center of Environmental Security. So 8% of the world's oil, which is a valuable source, is being used just to make plastic. Now, I know many of us don't intend or even think that our waste ends up like this, but the truth is most of us don't know where plastic trash ends up, when you don't recycle it. Now, why is recycling so hard? Well, recycling is undeniably part of the solution. Yet there are thousands of products that by design are either not recyclable or escape recovery. Bad designs slip through the cracks of most efficient waste management systems on the planet and become environmental pollutions. Recycling only works when you build a system that incentivizes recovery. So now we think about the recycling process. So really, there are only 4 major options that we have for disposing of plastic. landfilling, incinerations, cyclings, and biodegradation. All plastics can be disposed of in landfills or incinerators. But landfills require space, and the chemicals and energy contained in plastic plastic articles typically is lost in this disposal route. The second option, incineration, return of some of the energy from the plastic production, but is known to produce negative environmental and health effects. So burning this plastic, basically causes harm to not only the health because of the chemicals being released, but also to our environment. Many plastics can be recycled, and some materials used to make plastics can be recovered. However, this method is not fully utilized due to the difficulties with the collection and sorting of plastic. So basically, not all plastics are the same compounds. And even recycling most plastics, it's hard for the best waste management systems to sort plastics accordingly. And finally, certain polymers are designed to be biodegradable, thereby preventing long-term environmental damage from pollution. However, many biodegradable plastics may not biodegrade rapidly enough under ambient environmental conditions. To avoid accumulation from continuous inputs, and biodegradable plastics can also contaminate and disrupt the current recycling stream. Due to their similar appearance yet distinct makeup, Center of Environmental Security reports that this makes it difficult. Now that we know that there are several problems with plastic and the damages it causes and how hard it is just to get rid of plastic, recycle plastic, what are the solutions that we can do? Well, one solution is we treat plastic as a reusable material rather than a disposable commodity that's quickly discarded. That means making plastic more easily recyclable from the get-go and using fewer materials in the manufacturing process and increasing recycling facility availability. But then let's digress. How are we, as individuals, not big-time corporations, how do we change our view and how we use plastic? Well, it all starts with thinking about how much you're using. Take your own cup when you go get coffee. Reuse detergent bottles. Buy in mass bulk. That way you can just reuse those detergent bottles instead of going through so many. Refuse plastics like straws, shampoo bottles, and things of that nature that you only use one time and throw away. Recycling isn't always what it seems, but recycle everything you possibly can. These items will be in the earth for millennia, potentially. So let's refuse and reuse as much as possible. And the other thing is information. Tell people. A huge percent of the globe population don't know and probably don't realize what's happening, nor do they realize it's in their hands to change it. So, why is this all important? Why do we make a stand now? Well, we'll all grow old one day and we'll be gone. But this earth and our children's children will be here, and their children's children will be here. And we can choose to look away and think the next person will figure it out. We can turn a blind eye because life's just easier that way, Less work for us. What is simply being asked is for you to be more cautious and think about what you're purchasing. If certain packaging and items are not being bought, then the message will be sent out loud and clear to the people at the top. And I challenge everyone here in this room to look outside the box and start looking at the smaller things. Look at what you're purchasing. Look at what you're buying. Look at all the things that you're using and what we can use to not only recycle, but also decrease our usage of plastic. Because at the end of the day, we're only crippling our potential for a better future by entertaining the idea that conformity, laziness are sufficient answers to this big problem. Any questions?
Yes. So earlier you mentioned that the CDC in prevention reported that 93% of people had BPA in the urine. What exactly is BPA?
A BPA is a bisphenol A, which is an organic synthetic compound Now, when I mentioned earlier the side effects that they found from BPA, this is the chemical within the plastic that's causing those side effects.
Yeah, thank you.
Why is it hard to recycle?
So like I mentioned earlier, it's hard to recycle because not all plastics are the same. Some, like mentioned earlier, are biodegradable. Others have chemicals that are harmful. So for even the best waste management systems, it's hard to sort out plastics, what chemicals go where. So what happens is when you recycle, some of these get mixed in and basically chemicals get kind of mixed over from plastic to plastic, which kind of dilutes what they're trying to do. And that's why it's kind of difficult at times to recycle. Not everybody is on board with having the right standard to not using certain chemicals like BPA in their plastic. Other people are on top of the game and others not so much. So that's where the problem arises with trying to recycle plastics. It's because the separation of what plastics are good to recycle and what you don't recycle. If there's no other questions, that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Yeah, that was like 11 minutes.